Hello, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I'm your host, William Becker, and I have a pretty wonderful special guest on the show today. His name is Ryan, and we are going to do something a little different. Now, Ryan is a good friend, and he is pretty amazing in the fields of mediumship and metaphysics. I'm blowing his cover. Um, and I get a lot of joy out of watching him work and come along and all the rest of it. But he's also really savvy about this kind of thing. And today we're switching roles. So, Ryan, welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you, William, and hello, everybody. So I'm Ryan, and William and I were talking, and I asked, "Well, have you been interviewed for your show?" And he says, "Well, no." So that's what we're doing today. This will help you all get to know William a little bit better, and understand how he feels about mediumship, metaphysical, and also what his experience was as a kid. Um, I'm uh, William mentioned blew my cover. I've experienced things since I was a small child, and it's something that my family has also experienced, like my mom and my brother. And so I've been working with William, and I thought this is a good chance to have him toot his own horn. So, you ready, William?
Absolutely.
What's your name? I'm just kidding. Okay,
Donald Duck. I mean,
Donald,
okay, folks,
yes.
a disclaimer slightly to beginning. Ryan and I have a lot of fun together. And so, and I told him, don't behave. I
Yes.
want humor in the show. I also know it's not possible for him to behave more than 2 minutes, so that's part of his charm.
So also, we both are ADHD folks, and
Yep.
I have to keep him focused. So I will be jerking his chain a little bit and getting him to focus. Okay,
Sometimes it has to go the other way too.
never. Okay, are you all ready?
Yes.
Okay, so William, I have several questions that I'd love for people to know about you. Let's start out with where you're from, and sorry about the microphone, folks. Where you're from, and when you started uh, being feeling that you're a little different when it comes to
Ah,
metaphysical.
um, Jamie's a great guy
Hi,
in
Jamie.
England. He lives in England. I live in the Portland area. Um, no, I wasn't. In fact, I spent 3 years of my early life in South Central Oregon, about 30 miles from the California border, between um, a little ways away from Lakeview. Talk about out in the middle of the world or desert in the middle of nowhere. Um, but I'm basically a Portland boy with the obligatory running away to San Francisco for a few months and to Europe. I lived in England for a few months, but I'm here now. Then I grew up in a place called Oregon City. As far as once I started first grade, um, and Oregon City is the oldest town in the Pacific North, actually west of the Mississippi, as far as incorporated. They're older settlements. So we have a lot of history, and when you have a lot of history, you have a lot of ghosts. And I was about 8 or 9 and was with a group of friends in a part of town that I didn't get to go to very much. And um, I kept seeing this strange little boy peering around the grand staircase in the elevator and a few things. And I asked my friend whose neighborhood we were in who it was and if he could play with us. And my friend said, no, that's so and so, he's dead, died of typhoid. And I didn't think much of it. And we kept going. I mean, it was a beautiful day, spring day, about this time of year. Um, he wasn't threatening. It was another kid my age, just slightly older. So, what's to be scared of? Um, and so that was the first time seeing a ghost. Um, as far as the psychic work, the metaphysical work, that I started really developing, oh, probably when I was 17 or 18. So 2 or 3 years ago. Um,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, absolutely.
um, I dye it white. It's not natural.
Mm-hmm,
I mean,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
no, more years ago than most of you listening have or watching have been alive, actually. But and I've been developing and working on it ever since. And it just sort of came naturally. I mean, it's one of those things you always have, but when you grow up in a small town and you're different enough already, um, just not thinking the football team deserved more money than my Shakespeare teachers was enough to put me on edge and at odds with everybody in the school, um, let alone anything else. So you just keep your mouth shut. And um, but in late high school, early university days, I met like-minded people, and we practiced and we explored together and we worked together. And sometimes we had some guidance from people who were well established. A lot of it was self-done, and I've just been developing it over the years, mostly with my own tuning in and connecting. And a lot of that is through some pretty good meditation practice.
Okay, so on that, oh, and I just lost my question. That's the
Focus,
ADHD.
Ryan.
Yeah, that's the only time you can say that. Okay, no, no. So let's talk about mediumship. First of all, let's talk about what terms you prefer to use.
Okay.
Like, so what do you consider yourself? What terms make sense to you? Um, could you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that's actually it's a more complicated question than it sounds for me. For most people it isn't, because most
Well,
people have the boxes.
yeah, let's start with the box, and then we'll kind of unbox it.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Um, the boxes, a psychic is aware that there's something out there, something going on. They don't communicate with it, but they can maybe know a little bit more than that there's something there. They might know that what it is, even they might be able to see it some way, something. But a medium communicates back and forth. And that's one of the differences tuned in. And then people go into the Claire audio, Claire, all the different Claires about you see things or you hear or whatever. I do everything. It just depends on who I'm talking to and what's out there. And I hate boxes and pigeonholes. They don't work. It's too rigid of a framework. And so I call myself,
Ooh, wait, I'm going to ask you a question on that.
okay,
Is that okay? Okay,
absolutely. You're
so
in charge.
okay. Yes, I love this. Okay. So, yes, as human beings, it's a ingrained thing that we have where we classify. It makes it easier for it's actually okay. I'm gonna quote this, folks, and I don't actually know where I got it, but I it was out of I think of a science book or a psychology book or something like that. But
Mm.
humans categorize and simplify so it's easier to organize. So now
Right.
that we know that, and with those terms, what do you consider yourself if we're kind of thinking about those boxes for, and this is more for the layperson, I guess you'd say.
Right. Well, I guess and actually what a lot of my promotional work looks at is psychic medium,
Okay.
because psychic is an umbrella everything fits under, and then medium is because I have that direct communication. And
Now that you use those boxes, and now what if we didn't have those boxes? Do you
you've
have a
tricked
different
me.
way of explaining it? Yeah.
I know. You're lucky we're on the air. I would have used different language. Um,
Fine. You'll use
Um,
it later anyway. It's fine.
that's true. Um, I like to call myself, you know, a medium, and then just, but even, first of all, I'm William. And William has a lot of gifts and talents, as do pretty much anybody. Um, I'm a teacher, and I think a pretty good one. My feedback is good. I'm very good as a medium. I love reading history and watching it develop around me. I love hearing the stories that dead people want to tell me. I mean, there's just so much out there that I really enjoy, and I'm I'm thrilled about it. And so, to what I would call myself, I'm open to suggestions. Be
Again,
nice.
we have to be nice on this show. No, I think that's good. This is helping people to think through uh, the metaphysical world. And I do have a question to like, it's going to be a little bit of a divergence here, but
Uh-huh.
so let's talk about as let's say a psychic medium or whatever categories we want to say. Uh, could you explain to the audience what you physically see, feel, hear? Could you explain a little bit of uh, how that presents to you when you're interacting with the spirit world? Does
Okay,
that make
that's
sense?
yeah, it is. It's a good question, and I'm glad you also said metaphysical because that's a huge part in the basis of who I am, and everything else stems out of that for me. Um,
Would you
but
explain that real quick, William? When you say metaphysical, could you just give a little definition for folks?
yeah, metaphysical is basically, in my understanding, the way I use it, is that which is other than our three-dimensional five sense world.
Okay.
And it's where we link to the universal awareness as a consciousness. It's where we link to other realms. It's part of where we can work with beings that come in and out of this realm. And I've had physical, well, this goes a good segue into your question. I believe, I'm a very skeptical person. So I believe in what I'm talking about because I've had physical sightings that I can't explain away another day. When you watch a dwarf-like being coming through what looks like the Star Trek teleporter between two trees that are shaped like this in the middle of a nice sunny afternoon in a park, nobody else is around, and they look at you and they get startled and fade back away. Um, that's that's a pretty real physical vision experience, and I've had that happen multiple times.
And you weren't eating the mushrooms, right?
No, I was just going to say no
Okay, okay.
psychedelics, no alcohol even. None of my medications are psychedelic based, and those are all actually really important questions that you should always be aware of um, whenever you're doing any of this kind of work or looking. I tend to think it's the drugs, not the abilities if you people are tripping out and having visions.
Yeah, let's chitty chat about that just a little bit,
Yeah.
because we've worked together a little bit here and there,
Hmm.
and I'm highly skeptical of
Right.
myself and others, which I really appreciate that because from you is having that skepticism um, and looking for more proof, whether it's just in the moment or research or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
so I totally lost what I was going to say. And by the way, folks,
Okay.
I do that all the time.
It's true. He
It's
does.
true. It's true. But
So do I.
so thank you for saying skeptical.
Yes.
And I do agree with you. Like um, those like neurotoxins or alcohol, whatever. Um, Making sure that you're clear of mind helps a lot, doesn't it? And how
Yes, it
would
does.
you have people, if people want to go experience something or are trying to connect, what are some like, do they drink lots of water, sleep? What are some just basic things you could help people think about before they connect essentially to the metaphysical?
That's a really good question, and it's not one I thought about that much, which is kind of surprising. Um, but water, yes, and develop a good meditation practice. Um, I sat for an hour today, and it was brilliant. And I have ADHD. Some people say I have pretty high level ADHD. I don't know what they're talking about. Yeah, takes one to know one. But I, and that's a whole different conversation about what that really is in meditation and the purpose and all that. That's a whole different. But water, meditation, openness, and a certain amount of skepticism. Um, get rid of the ego at the door, partly because you're going to have, you can't say something after somebody shows you the proof or else somebody else says it and have what you say be valid. You might not think you're copying or having your mind being suggestible, but it's easy to do. And you also need to not have your ego saying, oh, I'm always right in everything, and I'm all this big guru of metaphysics or mediumship or psychic work. Um, because those are the kind of psychics and mediums you want to run away from, not run to, in my opinion. We're
That's
all human, we all make mistakes, we all misinterpret, and it's easy to make something that really isn't, but fits what we want it to be. And so that's part of that practice of having to really let go of that. And it's one of the things I struggle a little bit with teaching sometimes is I want to encourage people and I do. And if I know they're right, I tell them. But just because I'm not seeing what they're seeing doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. So they could easily see something I'm not. Different beings, just like here. Some people want to talk to some people and they don't want to talk to others. And it's the same with mediums. Um, I've had the beings say, no, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to them. It's like, oh, okay,
okay. So with that, I'm going to go back. I kind of diverted you a little bit, but so
that's okay.
um, you made a really just kind of reminded me actually. So what, how do you physically, you see, do you hear? Are there parts of your body you feel the spirit world or, you know, so could you explain to that in layman's terms or for people maybe just getting interested or have experienced things? Could you kind of tell us some things that how you observe and connect to the spirit world?
Yeah. Um, some of it is actually physically seeing with these two eyes, like
Hmm.
the little redhead boy I was mentioning earlier, my first ghost. I don't even like that term. Everybody's got these definitions. I call them beings, entities. They can tell me what else they want to be called. Um, and otherwise, a lot of it is with this eye, and
And what is that eye?
the third eye, and it's like the name of the chakra goes away right now, but it's by the pineal gland. And That's the traditional seeing eye. Um, Here too, I don't know. When I was earlier at some of this, I would feel mostly, and you can get the skin crawls and the different kinds of things, and those are still things that can happen to me. But I tune in so fast, I don't even acknowledge or recognize them because I'm just off. But a lot of people, um, they feel a heaviness. Now, folks, heavy doesn't mean bad. It means it's different and you don't know what it is. And
Hey,
people
go ahead, sorry.
and people talk about, oh, it's a dark energy or something. No, it isn't. It's a different thing that you don't know what it is yet. So it's scary.
So should people in your experience,
Uh-huh.
and we'll go back to the questions, but should
Yeah.
people be afraid, like, is there, and again, folks, this is from William's experience. We all have different experiences and
Right.
belief patterns, right? So this is,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Thank you
this
for
is coming from
clarifying that.
him. Yeah. Because we've worked together and I have a little bit different beliefs. I see things differently, experience things differently, and we just know that we're just different. So,
Mhm.
in your experience, is there anything that is harmful out there in the spirit world?
There are things that will try to let you think they are harmful.
Mhm.
I haven't met anything that what I found to be harmful. And again, um, I know experiences from people I trust that have something very different to them. And so I'm not going to say, but I'm also not going to say that if the person knew more, if the person knew now then what they know now, would this have been harmful?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And including in the one case I'm thinking of that you know about.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's a really good question. And I've had people, oh, I was in a place in Salem once in this, big scary, and I just said, oh, come on, really? Because it knew that it had no power over me unless I gave it to him. And it also knew I didn't want to do anything to it. I mean, I wasn't there to hurt it or do anything, but it just sort of, geez, and slunk away.
So, William, after this post and during it, can people comment?
Yeah, they'll be able to on YouTube and the Facebook piece
Okay.
too. Yeah, because
I'd
I'd
love
love
to
to hear
ask.
people.
Yeah, I'd love to hear if people have experienced and where they are in their journey, if they have experienced something that was potentially dangerous, or, maybe just would you want that kind of question, or should we go with more of a different question like, well, how do people see or feel? I think that second one's a better question, actually.
How do people see or feel?
Yeah, like just to understand how everybody's a little different. Like we're still
Right.
on that question, by the way, folks, which just William and I tend to like drift and come back, drift and come back. So William just talked about being able to see with his eyes, and using the third eye and the crown chakra are places that he experiences the metaphysical world or the spirit world.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to continue on that conversation, but I think if people would like to comment how they experience, if they experience, I'd love to know as well.
Right.
This also helps us to know that we're all very different. We see things very differently. So
Exactly.
we went to the crown. You ended with the crown chakra,
Hmm.
and then what? How else do you experience the metaphysical world or the spirit world?
Well, and most of the
Oh, and you did physical
communication,
too. Sorry. Yeah, you did
yeah,
physical too. Yeah.
most of the communication is telepathic, basically.
Mhm.
Um, And that makes sense. And that's including with beings that are non-human. And again, non-human doesn't mean it's evil, it means it's not human. Your puppy isn't human either, and it doesn't, most of the puppies I've met haven't been evil. There've been a couple cases, but
Oh,
that's
dogs
usually
are
the
never
owner's fault.
evil. Yeah,
The owners are. Um, Ryan doesn't like dogs at all. You can
not at
tell.
all.
Oh, never mind. Um,
Focus.
sorry, that was an earlier conversation that popped up.
Yeah,
But
you figured it out, didn't you?
yeah, I did.
Yes, okay.
I'm
So, yeah.
excited, and I
Okay, so
can't wait.
everybody, real quick, I know I'm going to talk to William after Monday next week because I said I'm going to go meet someone. And he's all excited that I'm going on a date. And it's like, no, I'm going to go look at this dog to adopt. So, and he just got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I love it. I
So,
love it. Anyway,
okay.
um, so okay. Um, yeah, and then physically, you still get those cold spots, and you still get the feeling somebody holding your hand. It's kind of spiderwebby a lot of times. Um, I know people that have a lot of other physical things. They know which direction to turn depending on the how hard their head hurts where. Um, but as you work on development, you expand what you do and how you receive and how you process. And that's part of what I love watching is when people get that and really enjoy. Um, and so now I want one too. But um, this is it's an all around process, and I don't find it uncomfortable. I don't find it anything. So, one thing I do notice if I start feeling it edge a bit and a bit shaky,
Okay.
it's
Could you
usually,
explain that?
yeah, if I start noticing that, oh, maybe I'm too concerned about something or my nerves are flaying or just my own issues and my own decades of therapy on and off and all the rest of it. Yeah, I'm as screwed up as everybody, and I love it, and it's me, and I am who I am, and I love myself, and I'm quite happy. Um, Nobody better try to change me because I won't change. Um, so there. But I I just look at, oh, I'm sorry. I get it's your fault, Ryan. You're the one that
You're getting
diverted me.
sidetracked.
I know. But physically, there are all these different ways, and everybody's going to be a little different than I am. One of the common things I heard is people can feel like, and I felt this a lot of times too, like you're walking into thicker air.
Mm,
I had that
okay.
at the tunnels in Oregon City, where I still need to take you. Um, and there are just, but that's a sign that there's something going on. You know, these are neutral signs. They don't, all they mean is there's something out of the ordinary for people, our existence in something. We're running into something different. And we can often over time recognize what that is simply because we can say, oh, yeah, this feels like this. Um, and sometimes, and I've had it happen where you actually feel something. There's one place, a friend of mine, when some of the tours I used to do, you know, he had his elbow grabbed, like a hand on it. My local pub waitresses have been pushed physically out of the bathroom. Um, we couldn't see anybody pushing them, but they were pushed.
Well, so I'm curious about one of the things that I experienced that I'd like to find out if you experience that the same way.
Okay.
Um, and and if any of our viewers now or later have a question or want to message, feel free to message William and he'll get back to you. But for me,
Yeah.
I experience a flood of emotion,
Right.
and then I can actually see like feel what's going on. So for me, I see in my mind. I don't actually rarely see things, right? And we've experienced these floods of emotion where it's actually taking on that experience from that person. Do you connect like that as well?
I used to more than I do now, I think. And there is some of that if that's how they're trying to tell me what's going on. If that's the communication style of the entity, I'll pick up on it, but not as heavily as a lot of people, because I don't consider myself to be an empath or an empath. You
Okay.
are.
Oh,
Um,
okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to have a less of a reaction to that. And as you develop more and more and remember your filters, um, you'll be able to have the communication and what that's like without all of the emotional piece to
Wh-
it.
Which, and this takes us to the next question, which I actually enjoy. I mean, I don't
Right,
enjoy it. It's not fun to experience trauma.
right.
William and I talk a lot about we talk about psychology as well. So this isn't just it's thinking of the sciences as well, right? So
Right.
that's where skepticism comes in. Um,
Yes.
so uh, with that, um, how would you? So we were talking earlier about how you feel the spirit world,
Hmm.
metaphysical. Um, Now I'd like to take it to the next step. So how would you? Oh, and drinking water, things like that. We started on that. How would we, you teach classes to help people open up their mediumship, psychic abilities, uh, getting in touch with the metaphysical. What is some of the first things, um, let's say I'm sitting down with you. What's the first thing we would do? We had our water, we didn't, drink 3 or 4 beers or do any mushrooms, not that we do, but before we
Yeah.
were pretty in a pretty good place and we're going to
Right.
go to a place space and try to experience or connect. So what we sit down and what's our next step? What would we you have us do?
Ground and center.
Okay, grounding. And you
Connect
made a really
yourself.
good point. Isn't grounding, you said meditation. Is that a way of grounding?
Meditation is a way of grounding. Although with something like this, when I say it, I mean it. This is something that we is a useful tool in everyday life all the time.
Mhm.
You're getting road rage because somebody just cut you off in traffic. Do a ground and center. Now you can't close your eyes and meditate for 10 minutes while you're driving.
What does that look like though?
You
Just
take your,
and one of your
you,
versions.
yeah, you visualize. And so for me, now when I'm teaching, I start out by teaching about a tree, and the roots go down and all the negative goes out. It keeps you grounded to the earth, arms up, the positive comes in. It circulates kind of a yin and yang. And so you have a balance within you of the ethers, as they would have been called at one period of history. Um, but the idea is you want something you can do instantly with your eyes open and functioning. You, when you're tempted to sneer at your boss or roll your eyes, ground and center. Um, if you stand in the grocery store and there's too much going on, and you start waving your hands in the air and closing your eyes, they're going to call somebody with hypodermic needle. Not really the outcome you're looking for. So it's a visual. This is all done with energy and visualization.
So let's talk about the hands waving. Could you make a connection to that tree about what that is?
Well, the hands are the leaves that are absorbing the sunlight
Okay.
and absorbing all the positive that comes through.
So people are imagining this, right?
Right.
Okay. And so that's
And
one way of grounding, right?
yes,
And then
what,
go ahead, sorry.
oh, um, I go to that place inside about my heart chakra where I connect and am my true self with the universal connection. I don't peep, but now folks, I've been working on this over 50 years. So don't think this is how you need to be and whatever. And a lot of it has to do with a lot of metaphysical work beyond psychic mediumship, you know? So, and that doesn't mean I'm special. It just means don't expect to be doing that stuff the first time you try. Um, be patient. And yours is going to look different than mine.
Okay. That's good to know. It's like, again, back to that whole, we all experience things differently. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
yeah.
So you just talked about the tree and we're imagining this, right? Um, and then we've grounded. What would be our next step in um, connecting to that spirit world, to the metaphysical? So we've
Okay.
grounded. We had water. I keep saying water because it does help. Yeah, same here.
Water is one of our most important nutrients, folks. And when you're
Yeah,
doing this, it's so important.
yeah, and then
Your
you can hear
brain
us.
doesn't
Oh,
work well.
yeah, exactly. And had a good meal, water, rested. So we we've now grounded. What's the next general step that we would take if we were at a place where we wanted to connect to the metaphysical, or even in our living room, right?
Yeah. Um, what, well, I'll get into the ethics in a bit, but what I do in the class, I have a handout that I give, and ground and centering's the first, shielding and filtering are the second.
Okay.
And those are energy protections. They're not going to shield you from a speeding bullet, but they will help you work with energy around you and keeping it from coming in and adjusting how much of what you want to let in.
So what would that look like if we were just to do a basic shield? Is it like
Okay.
a Star Trek thing where you see and there's the glow? Is that
Yeah, you can see the photon torpedoes bouncing off.
yeah,
No.
right?
Yeah. Um, actually, what it is anything you want. What I do as an instructor is I don't tell you how to do it. I help you find your own instruction manual and figure out how to read it and interpret it. Because everybody's different and everybody has a different way of doing things. And with the shield, what you're doing is you're blocking energy from getting to you. Now, there are lots of reasons to do that. It doesn't mean the energy's bad. Could mean you don't know what it is. It could mean that you just can't deal with it because it's too much. Um, something like that. And then a filter is exactly, it's like a coffee filter. Um, you're letting certain things in and blocking everything else. And the material these are made of, use your first instinct. Can be a brick wall, it can be steel, it can be glass, it can be. I don't suggest mirrors. I mean, there are traditions that say you can bounce things back to where they came. But when you don't even know this is negative or harmful, um, two, what happens if you miss? And three, all you were trying to do is protect ourselves from something we don't know what it is yet. So, um, why take action that is more than just a minimal defense? It doesn't make sense to me. And people also say you can destroy things coming in. So they want to use like a white hot fire that just burns up. But again, you don't even know what this is and might be destructive. All you need to do is stop it.
Would this be useful outside the metaphysical world, like interacting with people?
One of the things I really emphasize for people, especially empaths, is use a shield and then filter. And let me give you an example. I'll give a short, easy example, and then I can give a longer one, a personal experience. You're in Costco and you're
Hmm.
getting up overwhelmed. The first time
Yesterday
I went,
morning.
yep, the first time I went to Costco with my mom, I said, I don't think I ever want to come back here. And I'm not an empath, and I was overwhelmed. Um, I love the place now, but um, you then just gradually open up, like the rheostat on a stereo or the slide bar, whatever it is, where you're letting enough in that you can interact appropriately, but not so much that you're getting overwhelmed.
Is like turning up the volume a little bit.
Yep. hmm And I'll give you an experience that I had. I don't shield. I've been doing this. I trust myself. I know my strengths and what's out there. And so I just go in open all the time. Besides that, with the ADHD, I have to either deliberately focus or they have to really be obvious to get my attention. Like the guy that keeps peeking around the corner of the hallway back there. You've seen him,
He's
but
always there.
I know.
I haven't seen
Um,
him, but yeah.
you
Go
have,
ahead.
yeah. But the I was at a cemetery at night, a historic pioneer cemetery that's out the old wagon trail when it went south from Morgan City down the valley all the way to, and right before where the wagons were dropped off is a cemetery. Now I had permission to be there. It was at night. It wasn't dark. I had the key to get in and out of the gates. I emphasize that do not trespass, and especially cemeteries and such. There's so much vandalism that goes on. Behave yourself,
Yes. Be
because
respectful, which we haven't got to yet,
no,
but
yeah,
but
we will.
be respectful, right?
Exactly. And coming back, I got in, looked around and stuff, and I saw the usual shadowy forms running around the perimeter of the cemetery, which are there day or night. I mean, that was my first time there alone at night. I'd been there once on a photo mission, again with permission and a photographer. But on the way back, now this was also strong Native American territory where they would come all the way from Idaho during fishing seasons, during certain hunting gathering seasons. And it was also where the wagons, before they were lowered down, then would stop and rewater. And I got really kind of concerned. And usually, what concerns me out in the woods alone is okay, who's out here doing things that they shouldn't be doing? And I'm going to stumble into something and get knifed. Um,
Mhm,
it's not the paranormal, it's the living. But this was different. I could see there weren't any living, and that's just so I put up a shield. This especially after I was walking and something grabbed my pant leg, and down at the bottom, and I thought, oh, it's just a stick I must have stepped on or something, and I took a step or two, and I went, no, that's not right. And I looked, and there were no sticks. There was nothing anywhere that could have done that to the bottom of my pants. So okay, and so I put up the shield, and there were thousands of Native Americans on one side of this road, and they wanted to talk. And so I opened up, and they were all talking at once.
mhm,
And so I said, excuse me, I can't hear you all at once. And so I put on the shield or the filter where I just let in a few like-minded voices at a time. I got all the story, but I got it in a way that I could digest it and hear it. and they were cool with that. And they told me, we want to tell you our story, and we want you to tell the story, but we want you to keep walking as we tell it to you. So that's what I did. It's their spot, not mine.
So it's almost like when you go into a really busy, like social, really focusing on the person you're talking to, or maybe the two people you're talking to, and
Right.
concentrating on that that's what it kind of sounds like to me. um, is that's the filter, right? Because when we're in a loud restaurant, we're really listening. Well, sometimes we like to listen to the people next to us because there's some
Yeah, it
juicy
depends.
stuff going on. But
Yeah,
but usually we're just like focusing on our table. So that's
right.
kind of, it sounds like that's kind of similar to how we filter out. You just do it more of a metaphysical way, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a little bit more difficult than in a situation like I just described or in Costco than
Oh
it is
yeah.
when you're in a restaurant looking,
Yeah.
and especially if you're having an intense conversation or
Even work,
otherwise.
right? In
Oh,
your
yeah,
meetings, just like, and is it picking and choosing? Uh, so for me, I I work, uh, I have a lot of meetings, there's a lot of opinions, a lot of different personalities, and I've had to learn to like just kind of t tune out certain conversations. Is
right.
that similar where you're just like, I'm just going to tune this out a little bit and this out a little bit and focus on this, but in a metaphysical way? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, that makes sense because you're blocking out the energy that you're getting from other people.
Okay.
And, over time, this really develops into something that's more practical too. Because I don't know if I had a chance to tell you, I wanted to, but I was doing something. And oh, it was a bunch of loud, obnoxious Americans. Yeah, I'm American and I'm loud and
Same
obnoxious
here.
too, but sometimes, but I was able then to just focus on what I was doing or whatever the situation was, and everything else was just a background murmur, and I didn't notice it, and it didn't affect me anymore. And I didn't consciously filter.
Hmm.
I just rose above that. And so they're kind of they have the same results, I think, but you're making me think they're kind of two different pieces or ways of doing it. If you're blocking
Yeah.
out the conversations, that's a refocusing.
Hmm. That
And
makes
when
sense.
you're blocking out the energy, it's a little different. And both are really important. I mean, um,
I,
we
I
do have,
think you're right. They're very important because I think when people are starting out, uh, connecting to the spirit world, I have a hard time when there's a lot of activity going on because
right.
I haven't, so it's almost like the two sides of the brain working together.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that's interesting because there's shielding in the human world and shielding in the spirit world.
exactly.
Um, and
And you
they
can
might,
help shield and filter out that human world to listen to the spirit world.
yeah.
Mhm.
So we covered shielding, and um, you encourage people to kind of, is there anything people can research about shielding, or how do you feel about researching or reading books?
I don't much. I
Yeah.
mean, I love to read. I have a bachelor's in history. It's not that I don't read. I don't read books on this.
Okay.
There's
Could you tell me why?
Yeah,
Because I'm,
because I haven't written the right one yet.
ah,
How's that for ego? Um, see, I warned you about these things, folks. No, the thing is, there's so much out there that isn't based on anything substantial and isn't based on anything but what people keep saying. And I'm sorry, I just saw movement over by a chair and it wasn't anything in the mirror. Anyway, um, So, mm, welcome to my home. But
Focus. No, I'm kidding. No,
but so I I haven't found anything useful particularly, and I think if you're reading the wrong things, they can take you down the wrong pathway. And I'm not sure how to research it in a way that gives valid credibility. I know people who will refer things and such like that, but that doesn't mean it's not just the regurgitation of the same things in a different format.
yeah,
And
and that's interesting because we also earlier talked about power of suggestion.
hmm yes,
And when we worked together, I remember, do you remember, or started working together, I was like, I don't want you saying anything to me.
right.
And and it was really to make sure that, so I think it's interesting that I I'm I'm going to put words in your mouth,
Okay.
but I
If they
think,
don't fit, I'll tell you.
yeah, if they don't fit, tell me. But I think what I'm getting from this conversation, what I've gotten from, a lot of other conversations, is the authenticity of oneself, and exploring what you're experiencing. And I like the framework you're giving, how we show up, shielding, grounding, shielding. Um, we'll talk about, we're running out of time, but we'll talk about,
And we can go over if we need to, if
okay,
you've got
yeah, we
time.
could do
Yeah.
that if you're okay with that. But we
Yeah.
could talk about respect. I think those are really good foundations. And
Right.
and then the last one is like saying goodbye. Don't forget.
Yes.
So we're just giving people a really good framework. But
Right.
it's, I think also what I've learned is when we've worked together, and I've been around other people that um, are psychic mediums, self-proclaimed psychic mediums. I mean, there is no like national psych medium, um, uh, like what do you call it?
The society
School,
or
right?
oh
Yeah,
yeah.
society, or certification. So, but
Actually,
it's
there are
just,
some places that will do that, and I don't have a lot of faith in their credibility.
okay. I didn't know that, folks. See, I
Yep.
I try not to pay attention. Anyway, so I think it's good to also talk about those things and how other people shield. And William is really giving you a foundation from his standpoint. So it's great to explore this. And I do find it interesting about the books because I also haven't read books. I asked you about those, and
Mhm.
in thinking about it, it made a lot of sense. And then just going back to how we've experienced things, if we've experienced it when we're younger, and
Right.
being really uh, uh, skeptical, but also, I know I've said that several times, but also like, I just lost the word I was thinking of, William. Oh, taking the ego out, being
Yes.
humble about this. That is so, so important. Is just being humble, and you know what? You may feel something. Well, it could have actually been a spider web, right? So,
Right.
yeah. Okay, so
And I look at things like that. I mean, I
yeah,
feel something. Okay, was there something that could have made that? I see a flash outs of color of like a shirt or something outside my window. Is there something blowing in the wind? Okay, there's no wind, there's nothing blowing, and there's nothing around that would blow that's blue. So, the neighbor's tree leaves are not blue. So, um, yeah, that's something. In a building, especially with all the flashes out of the corner of your eye, or even dead on. Corner of the eye is a different wavelength, and that's what those entities put out. But okay, is there a coat rack standing there with a coat at the same height that's the same color of what I just saw?
yeah.
If there is,
Or
then
that
maybe what I
looks
saw
like,
wasn't.
yeah.
hmm
It, I think there's one other point I wanted to add. I want to get your take on it. But so as well, William knows this because we've known each other for a while. But I'm very much into psychology and therapy and understanding the human mind. For instance, I think if people touch back on their experience, that is something you can research.
That was
Psychology,
something.
like
I'm sorry?
psychology, and that's something you can research
Right. But what do you mean
because
by touch back?
well, so yeah, sorry. So I touch back on the fact that I have hypervigilance, which is
Right.
look it up, folks. So I pay attention to everything around me at all times. So when starting to work with William, I am so used to paying attention to everything that I started to see the things that were maybe a little out of place that weren't in that state. So that's an interesting thing to think about as well is what are your prior experiences, right? Am I making a
Yes.
good point or am I going on a crazy tangent like I
No,
sometimes
actually, I think you're making a good point.
Okay,
Let's
cool.
see where it ends up.
Whew. So for me, it's like the hypervigilance, knowing that you know your home, you know how the light refracts, just paying attention to that. And there could be some little things that change in feeling of the home. Are those things that people could also like? It sounds like we're really trying to just calm ourselves and focus more.
That's a lot of it. It really
Yeah.
is. And that's a really brilliant way of putting it. Thank you for saying that.
So we're experiencing all this
He's more
stuff,
than
right?
just a pretty face, folks. What can I say? Um,
Thank you. Um, Thank you. So we're experiencing all these things, right? Now, we're experiencing things. Let's talk about ethics real quick, and
yeah.
then how we let's talk about ethics, and then we'll talk about how we say goodbye.
Okay. One of the things that I really emphasize in my class, and I have zero tolerance for breaking this rule basically, is we treat the beings with respect. And we treat the locations with respect, and we treat the living that own it, and we treat the others in our class with respect. My classes are a safe zone, and I've been very fortunate. I've been doing this for quite a few years now, and I haven't had anybody be a jerk to other people or to the entities. So I haven't had to kick anybody out because I would. And no, they wouldn't get a refund. Um, it's pretty clear behavior is I the older I get, the less tolerant I get about certain things. Um, and so we are not we're not even invited guests. We just barge in. Now we're invited by whoever owns the property or if it's public property or whatever, but not by the people or the beings we're communicating with. And even with that, I say beings because they're not all human. And I don't want to insult something that's not human by calling it a person, um, if they find that insulting. But so common sense about it. And if you're in a place, remember the way we live now is a scandal even 100 years ago. Even men's dress, although men can get away with it a little better. But women, you're wearing pants? That's a total shocking scandal. You have your own incomes that don't go to your husband, and you have your own bank accounts. Um,
So what would be a respectful way to show up then? Because it sounds like there's feeling like, for instance, I have tattoos.
right.
That I learned was not something positive to bring in, not necessarily, but I mean, it wasn't as big of a deal. But is there just a small like business casual? Do we dress business casual? Do we, um, what would you suggest people do when they're
I
experiencing, especially a
yeah,
place that's known, right?
yeah, and it depends so much on the location as to what periods the entities are from. And so I think mostly what matters is present yourself well. Be aware that your clothing and your conversation style may be offensive to the entities. And if you're getting a feeling that it is, apologize and then say, I'm sorry, this is just how and what we are now. I knew a woman who used to get poked and punched a lot, she said. Honestly, some of the things I found out later, I take everything with a little bit of a grain of salt these days, but I didn't have any reason to doubt her at the time. But she was strong-willed, an engineer, very bright, very independent, and um, late 19th century women didn't like it. Neither did the men.
So
And
being
so,
aware of how you're, I always I call it this, be aware of how you show up. That could be
yes,
emotionally, physically. I probably will still wear a black t-shirt and,
everything that
jeans,
you've done with
trousers. It,
with me, you've been perfect.
yeah,
Um,
and some people and some spirits don't like that.
no,
And that's, but again, if you're showing up with kindness, that can kind of work its way through, right?
intent is far more important than the dress.
Yeah. So,
And
oh,
being
go
a
ahead.
little reasonable about watching some of the language, if it's appropriate, and do not antagonize.
We see a
Don't
lot
put,
of TV shows
yeah, don't
where
do that.
yeah,
Might be a good way to get a reaction, but how would you feel if somebody was doing that to your great grandmother?
yeah.
I'd punch him. And I
So
don't
think it
believe in
through.
violence, you know? So, and
Yeah.
I'd still punch him. Um, so that's important to, there are other ways to try to get reactions that are nice and supportive.
So, and I think that's a topic, and at the end, folks, I am going to give y'all a little homework,
Oh,
um,
good.
for William. But let's end up with, and then what about goodbye? What do we always do once we leave a space or we're done connecting?
When you're done connecting, wherever this is, tell them goodbye. It can be a mental process. It doesn't have to be a physical, verbal process. Um, and then, and let them know that if possible, you'll come visit them again, but they can't come visit you. I especially mean this for newcomers and people who don't have 50 years in the field. You do not want to invite people home or beings home with you. Um, and if they do come, just tell them to go. This isn't their space and they need to go back. And they will. And 99% of them don't mean any harm anyway. Um, but no, you don't need to start letting your house become Grand Central Station.
Because then it
Not
might already be Grand Central Station. You never know.
what yours is and mine is, but that's because in part what we do.
Yeah.
Although some of that was here before I moved into the house, my folks had it. But
So,
did I answer the question?
yeah, great. And uh,
And then
thank you.
unplugged, redirect yourself.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, is there any last things now that we pretty much just went over your experience, helped your viewers kind of get to know you a little bit better on a personal level and how you experience the metaphysical spiritual world. What I'd like to do before you give us your ending thought and goodbye, I, I'd like to ask your viewers to put in things you'd like to learn. Um, Send William some questions on this platform. And if you have questions, like help him also think about he's thinking about doing some new class types.
Yep.
So he'll talk about that at another time.
Yes.
So there's going to be some more stuff kind of coming out of Mr. Becker here. So, William, thank you for letting me have the opportunity to interview you, find out a little bit more about your experience. I thank your viewers. Is there anything you'd like to say before we say goodbye to everybody?
I can't think of much except to thank everybody and to thank everybody that's been supportive over the years. And of course, to thank you, Ryan. This is great. I loved every minute of it. And Ryan's one of the most gifted, natural, just
Shh.
instinctive I've met.
Thank you.
Um,
I
and
don't know yet, folks, but thank you.
he hasn't fully adapted, or he doesn't quite believe me yet, but that's okay. I keep working on it as we keep doing more work. But thank you all so much. William at Paranormal Insights is my email. That's a good way to get a hold of me. Um, like Ryan was saying on the platform, you can do that as well. Um, kind of trigger my name because on the Simply Spooky Network, there are several people that are part of that in several different shows. Um, my This will go out on my YouTube channel as well. I mean, I'll upload it to it within the next day or so. So that'll be another platform for people to watch and to respond to. Um, and I'd love to hear from you.
All right, thank you. Have a great evening or day wherever you are in the world.
Yes.
And thank you for having me, William. And tune in for the next show.
Yes. And thank you for being such a great host.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope so. All right. Thanks all.
Take care.
Bye bye.